Now we have to be honest, because the law versus grace conversation has two ways people get it completely wrong, and both of them lead somewhere dangerous. The first way people get this wrong is by using grace as an excuse to live however they want. If grace covers everything, then nothing really matters. Sin freely, God forgives freely. Grace becomes a blank check for whatever you feel like doing. No boundaries, no accountability, no holiness. You've probably heard this version. Maybe you've even felt the pull of it yourself after a season of failure. God already knows I'm going to mess up again, so what's the point of even trying? Paul anticipated this exact argument in Romans 6, 1-2. He wrote it as a direct question, almost like he could already hear someone making the case. Shall we go on sinning so that grace may increase? His answer is, by no means. He follows it immediately with something that reframes everything. We are those who have died to sin. How can we live in it any longer? Here's what Paul is saying. A person genuinely transformed by grace doesn't want to keep sinning. Not because they're afraid of punishment, but because the old appetite has been replaced. The engine has changed. You don't reform a dead man's behavior, you resurrect him, and resurrection changes everything about what he wants. Grace doesn't lower the bar, it changes the person standing in front of it. So no, grace is not a blank check. It's a new heart, and a new heart wants different things. The second way people get this wrong is by never fully leaving the law behind. This one is more common, and honestly, more dangerous. Because it doesn't look like a mistake from the outside, it looks like seriousness, devotion, commitment to holiness. The argument sounds like this. Grace alone isn't enough of a guardrail. People need clear rules and consequences to stay in line. Without the law keeping people accountable, Christianity goes soft and holiness disappears. It sounds responsible. It even sounds like it's protecting something important. But Paul addresses it directly in Galatians 5:4. You who are trying to be justified by the law have been alienated from Christ. You have fallen from grace. Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say they fell into immorality. He didn't say they fell into worldliness or rebellion. He said they fell back into a system that was never designed to justify them, and in doing so, stepped away from the only thing that could. Here's what this actually looks like in a person's life, and be honest with yourself as you hear this. You've been a Christian for years, maybe decades. You know your Bible, you serve consistently, you show up every Sunday. From the outside, everything looks exactly right, but privately, you're exhausted. You can't remember the last time you felt genuinely close to God rather than simply accountable to Him. Prayer feels more like a check-in than a conversation. You're performing a faith you're not sure you're actually experiencing anymore. You're managing your sin rather than being transformed from it, and underneath all of it runs a quiet, persistent question you've never said out loud. Is this really it? That's not devotion. That's not commitment. That's the law dressed up in church clothes, and it will wear you down to nothing if you stay there long enough. Jesus, who embodied both perfect holiness and perfect mercy at the same time, walked straight down the middle of both of these errors. Not soft on sin, not crushing people under impossible requirements, something entirely different from both. And that's exactly where grace actually lives. Jesus addressed this directly, and most people either overread what he said or completely miss what he meant. Matthew 5:17. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. That word, fulfill, carries everything. It doesn't mean cancel. It doesn't mean make optional or irrelevant. It means complete. Bring to its intended destination. Become what it was always pointing toward. The entire sacrificial system pointed to a final, perfect sacrifice. Jesus fulfilled it. The priesthood pointed to a perfect mediator between God and man. Jesus fulfilled it. The law pointed to a perfectly righteous life that God required of humanity. Jesus fulfilled it on our behalf, in our place, with a perfection we could never produce. He didn't tear up the law. He became its completion. And then in the Sermon on the Mount, he does something that completely dismantles the idea that grace is a lowered standard. He takes commandment after commandment and raises the bar. You have heard it said, do not murder. But I tell you, anyone who is angry with his brother is subject to judgment. You have heard it said, do not commit adultery. But I tell you, anyone who looks with lust has already committed it in his heart. If grace was just God going easy on us, the Sermon on the Mount makes absolutely no sense. Jesus is holding up a standard that no amount of human willpower can reach on its own, because that's the point. He's not reforming behavior. He's revealing that the real problem was never just actions, it was always the heart behind them. The law could regulate what you do. Only grace can transform what you want. Then comes John 8, a woman caught in adultery, dragged into the temple courts, thrown at Jesus' feet with a crowd holding stones and a legal case that was airtight. The Pharisees had the law exactly right. Leviticus was clear, Moses was clear, and Jesus knelt in the dirt and wrote something in the sand. Let him who is without sin cast the first stone. One by one, starting with the oldest, they dropped their stones and walked away. He looked at her and said, "Neither do I condemn you. Go and sin no more." That's not Jesus being soft on sin. He doesn't pretend the adultery didn't happen. He doesn't argue that Moses was wrong. He does something the law had no mechanism to provide. He separates the sin from the person's future. He offers a new beginning that the law, by design, could never give. The law brought her to the floor. Grace lifted her up and sent her somewhere new. That's the difference, every single time.